Boys and girls, your attention, please.
Hello and welcome back inside the Park from Mayfair podcast number 910. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
A.K.A. Negative Camber.
Stop yelling at Todd.
Stop yelling at me. You know what we do on race weekends? We talk about the Mexico Grand Prix in this podcast because on race weekends we
watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on.
That's
Todd.
exactly what we do. But before doing that, what do I know about driving a car very fast? A little. Maybe just a little. But I go out and find somebody who does know how to drive a car fast. You know him. You love him. Hey.
He's bad. He's beautiful. He's crazy. It's...
Hello,
You know he's
everybody. This
crazy.
is Paul Charles, the International.
It's Paul. Paul, how you doing?
So crazy.
You are crazy. You all happen to also be the sporting manager, the Heart of Racing Aston Martin team.
Yes.
And, you've
Thank
got to
God.
be... I know everybody's thinking, well, season's over, Paul.
Oh, Jesus.
You're not doing anything now.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
getting a wee taste of your off-season
Sorry.
activities.
Yeah, I was
That's
a little
crazy.
late to the party today.
Yeah.
There's just so much going on right now.
It's hard
crazy.
when you've got a brace of Valkyries you've got to field next year.
Yeah, we got to build them, got to test them, wind tunnel them.
Yep.
Now we got our next test is at Daytona in a couple of weeks. It's
Nuts.
it's a great problem to have, but there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle that need to be sorted. So
Yeah, sure
Yeah.
are. It's crazy. Well, I hope you managed to squeeze in the Mexico Grand Prix.
I did.
Yeah,
Yes.
good,
Yeah,
good.
yeah. I don't have a lot of time to see the revelry beforehand, but
Yeah.
I'm not too sad about that either. But did Martin
Yeah.
Brundle get snubbed again, or?
No, he.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't think he did the grid walk. It was.
Okay.
It was Karun and Bernie, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, so they got that going for him.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. Well, let's talk about the race in Mexico. Might as well. It's a couple things about the track this weekend. They shortened the DRS zone down that front because the front is the fastest straight in Formula One. They were doing at one point 216, 217 miles, and I think the record's around 230.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
By Valtteri, maybe?
Valtteri, yeah. The
Yeah.
first year, I think, and then
First year it was,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, a lot of that's contributed because it's the elevation, right? It's 2,200 meters above sea level. Now, over here in the States, we use this thing called the British Imperial System. I mean, you may have heard of it, Paul. That means in old money, it's 7,200 feet above sea level.
Yeah.
It's rare air up there, 20% reduction in air pressure. Oxygen's a little more hard to come by up there. They were laughing and making fun of Charles Leclerc talking about his drinks bottle was malfunctioning. But, if there's anybody, it's happened to me personally, but if you've ever been at that kind of altitude,
Yeah.
you can get dehydrated pretty quick.
Very quick. Yeah.
Yes.
It takes you a long time to get acclimatized to. I used to do a lot of stuff in Colorado and things like that. We're up and
Yeah.
literally it was like 3 days just to even feel normal, right?
Yeah, it really is. If you go out to Colorado and some of those mountains is 8,000 feet, something like that. Boy, yeah, I've done that before. Boy, I'm slamming water just trying to stay hydrated. So it's I know it sounded funny on the radio, but it's kind of a serious thing,
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And obviously they came from the US. I think everyone went straight to Mexico just to get themselves, ready. But, by Thursday you've got to be ready. So
Yeah, for sure. The thinner air means less resistance, less drag. And I was wondering if
Less
some
grip.
cars, and I was thinking going into, I know I mentioned it maybe at the end of the Austin Grand Prix. I was kind of curious to see how Ferrari do in that leaner air. And I was curious if they in particular or other cars would really be struggling with the cooling. As it was, I didn't hear a lot about the cooling issues other than Fernando. He had the brake issue and had to retire the car. But so I was kind of thinking maybe, but they're all professionals. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, I remember seeing in the practices all the whispers coming out of the back of the
Yeah.
car. I mean, they're definitely on the limit.
Yeah.
And all race cars, they live on the limit anyway because if they're taking in too much air or whatever, then they're slowing themselves down, so they're always on the limit. But definitely a problem up there. But at least they weren't chopping off the side pods and things like that, like in the old days.
Yeah, cutting all those big holes.
Yeah.
I remember the old days.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty. Hey, what's the toughest part of this track, do you think, Paul?
I mean, is it the part of the track? It's the general lack of grip just makes it very difficult for them. You know, they're used to driving a car that has a lot of grip, pushing itself down the ground, and these cars, they don't. So the braking zones, probably everywhere, is probably the most difficult thing for them to get used to. They used to be able to bang on that pedal and it just grind itself down, but it just doesn't happen. So they have to adjust how they use the brake pedal as well, and then obviously changing direction. But those S's, probably the hardest thing as far as corners are concerned. You know, getting that rhythm right, very much like the S's in the US. But with the lack of downforce, once the car loses grip, poof, it goes out. As we saw in the race, Charles Leclerc just kind of, it just snapped on him, right? So the tire, there's a lot more reliance on mechanical grip, but once that goes away, the car, there's nothing to bring it back. There's no downforce to bring it back.
Yeah, it's a tough circuit, fast circuit, incredibly well attended. There's like 404,000 people in aggregate over the weekend.
Close to the U.S.
Close to the U.S.
Yeah.
I think the U.S., and I mentioned on the last podcast, I think we set a F1 attendance record a couple of years ago in Austin at 440,000 or something.
Right.
But I was really impressed to see the turnout in Mexico City. That was awesome. I mean, you have such a massive population there. It's easier to get 400 and some thousand than it is in Austin, but impressive.
Right. And the South Americans in general, including
Sao Paulo and
Mexico, it's they're very intelligent and very much into motorsports, very very much so. Yeah. And it's not everyone say, oh, it's Sergio. That's the only reason anyone's showing up. Hey, I saw someone in a steak jacket. I was like, well, they must have been going on sale or something. But there's definitely a cross section of fans. They're not just about Sergio. They're just F1 fans, racing fans.
Yeah, lots of Ferrari shirts, a lot of Lewis Hamilton fans.
Yeah, so
a lot of
Sergio brought them there, but there's always been a massive fan base down in Mexico and everywhere south of there as well. So.
Yeah, it goes all the way back to the 60s of the Rodriguez brothers, and then you have that huge throng of Esteban Gutierrez. So anyway,
his mom.
Yeah, right. So you've got them. So anyway, well attended. Kudos to all the fans of Mexico. That was great to see that much fans.
It is.
So let's talk about the race, how they finished. We'll start at the sharp end of the grid. We'll start Ferrari and Charles Leclerc. Yeah, Charles Leclerc in P3, Carlos Sainz in P1. Carlos Sainz took the win. Look, Carlos walked into this weekend and he said that he wanted one more win with Ferrari, and it was very clear he'd picked this weekend.
Yeah.
He looked great all weekend, even on Friday, on Saturday, took pole position. No doubt he had the bit between the teeth, Paul, despite being passed into turn one from pole position by Max. And he ran wide there, and Max ran him out wide. He fought back, great pass to come back, led as he passed Max back, then led for the entire race from that point on, all the way to the flag, occasionally complaining that he felt that the team was pushing a little too hard given their pace, but given Lando's pace late in the race, I bet he was glad they were pushing hard.
That's why, that's why he had to do it.
Yeah, sure. Lando was reeling him in, but he still held on. Took a great win. Great to see for him. I'm sure Ferrari, in the drivers' championship, maybe get Charles up there, but he's having none of it. He's driving for himself and delivered Ferrari win. Great to see, and a great run by Carlos.
Yeah, it really was. They have this show called Win the Weekend in IMSA that they show, and he definitely won the weekend. He didn't just win the race; he won the weekend. He controlled it, and honestly, he's been good the past couple of races too. It just hasn't come to the results table, but I think he's been easily the match for Charles, if not better, even in the US GP.
Yeah,
it just didn't come around, but I think he's seeing the races tick off closer to him moving to Williams, and the chances of winning races for the long term not very far.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think he's really focused, and
Mm.
he's got the bit between his teeth, and he's attacking every weekend, and he's trying to get the most out of it he can. If Ferrari win the manufacturers championship, fine by him, but I think he's really in it for himself, as you said.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's what a resurgence for Ferrari. Who had it on their bingo card that Ferrari would light it up the last half of the season?
Yeah, it's been a crazy season, right? I mean, it's like
has.
McLaren
Yeah,
come on,
yeah.
who had that? And then Ferrari
Yeah.
coming back, everyone they looked lost. Like, are they the third or the fourth worst team? And now they're the best team again.
I know.
Crazy, wacky season we're having.
It's bizarre because the whole first part of the season, my fantasy GP, I was all in on my Ferrari. I was all Ferrari. And being a Ferrari fan, I was, picking Charles for win and Carlos for second, and I was getting my brains beat out. I think I'm in last place in fantasy GP because I hung in there too long for Ferrari. I finally ditched him and went to McLaren, and now I picked Lando for the win, Oscar in second, and it comes. It's terrible. This is terrible. And now Ferrari, my team, yay, back on top. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, a good run for Carlos. He did a great job. Let's
Yeah.
talk about Charles. Charles looked to be struggling a little bit more this weekend, compared to Carlos. Just wasn't quite there, wasn't quite on it. But he was able to take advantage of the Lando and Max battle. Like Austin, drove down the inside, managed to take P2 and held on to that for most of the race. It almost looked like he was going to get to P2. Ferrari blaming some back markers that possibly cost him P2, some blue flags being ignored for a little while. But late in the race, he ran wide, as you mentioned earlier, and that lost P2 to Lando. Lando seemed to have the measure, and he handed P2 to Lando. And then ended up slotting in. I wasn't sure, Paul, when I was watching it, my initial thought was coming in that last turn, maybe he looked a little wide, a little off the racing line, and I was wondering if he caught a little dust or some marbles, sent him out, or I couldn't tell if it was just worn tires he was struggling with, but ended up slotting in P3.
Yeah, he definitely went a little bit wide, and then obviously you saw, I don't know if you saw the wheel marks, he definitely got wheel spin as he was getting back on the power there, so that snapped the car.
Yeah.
But he was trying hard. The blue flag or the traffic didn't work his way, unfortunately, and he needed every single tenth of a second to keep Lando back. And when he started losing that, then he had to push harder, and that just kind of made matters worse. And obviously, way too hard in that last turn. But
it's a nice catch, though.
Yeah, it was a nice catch. That could have been a massive one.
Oh,
just massive.
That would have been bad.
Yeah, very bad. As I said, the downforce fixes a lot of problems sometimes, but without the downforce there to catch the car, it was going to snap, and he did everything perfect to get himself out of that trouble. But he was just a smidge off of Sergio Sainz, but it's I don't know what to say that what he has to do, but it's so close right now. Any little negative is going to send you behind.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But it was a good result for Ferrari nonetheless. A win, a great 2 races on the trot. We'll see if they can repeat it in Brazil. If you ask me if I thought Ferrari be heading into Brazil this weekend, potential favorites for the win, I would have said no. I would have thought McLaren, but I don't know. Hard to know.
Yeah, Vasseur is looking like a genius right now, right?
Yeah. He's this is a team last year. People were making fun of their strategy.
Yeah.
They're making fun of them. I mean, as a Ferrari fan, I go, a little sheepish being a Ferrari fan, but they're doing well. Great to see. Let's talk about McLaren. Lando Norris in P2, Oscar Piastri down in P8. Lando wasn't happy with Max's driving, having ran Norris wide on the first passing attempt, and then again, both of them went off on the second passing attempt. I guess let me put a pin in it. I would say he said it was dangerous driving, but once, let me just close out Lando's race. Once he got those hard compounds on, his car really seemed to come alive on that pace and was reeling in Charles at that point.
Certainly the long pace for sure.
Long pace, really. Lando said he thought they were the fastest car out there. And he may be right. He reeled in Charles and was reeling in Carlos at a rate of knots towards the end, just ran out of laps. And one might argue, had he not had that kerfuffle with Max, he may have been able to run down both Ferraris. Don't know. That was woulda, shoulda, coulda. But having said that, let's talk about the clash with Max in that opening stages of the race. Certainly, Max
everyone's favorite subject.
I know everybody's got a strong opinion on this. Certainly, a lot of people, if you're Lando fans, unhappy Max didn't get penalized and Lando did in Austin, and Christian Horner even bringing out telemetry to say he thought both 2 10-second penalties was a little much. He brought out the telemetry and showed the press Lando's ultimate fastest lap during the entire race compared to that lap where he was 15 kilometers faster. There was no way he was going to make it through that turn either. And so he was pointing out that, okay, he got the 10-second penalty. The second was a little uncalled for, and he felt like it was a knock-on, sort of an additional punishment because the people weren't happy that Max wasn't penalized in Austin. That's Horner's opinion. But anyway, how did you see the altercation? Ham-fisted from Max?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Certainly the second one. But I went back and forth with I can't remember who it was on the page there about where people mistook me saying there shouldn't have been a penalty last time because I'm a Max fan or something like that. It's like that's just how the rules are written, and they obeyed by the rule. The rule stands for this race, and basically Max wasn't farther enough along in that first instance, right? So they were literally side by side, and he should have given up some room. And I think that the rule is the wrongdoing. It opened up everyone just to dive bomb into an apex, and as long as they got to the apex, no matter whether they're in control of the vehicle, no matter whether they could take a racing trajectory or not, it didn't matter. It's just you had to be at the apex, and I think that's where the rule is wrong. You should be able to, maybe if you want to use that apex as a standard, yes, but you still have to be in control of your vehicle and be able to keep it on the track. Ultimately, Max couldn't do that, and certainly there should be some leeway to giving each other enough room where we can see dices and things like that. So I think what we do in US racing is, as long as you're significantly alongside, someone has to give you room, and I think that's really where the rules should stand. Else you do have this dive bombing mentality, which everyone started to adopt in Mexico. I think now that they've given out these penalties, everyone's going to backtrack on that a little bit. But because they didn't give Max a penalty before, everyone was like, okay, all fair in love and war, let's all go for it. The second time, obviously, Max it doesn't matter what speed Norris was doing. Max just went in there without any chance of making the corner. So even if Lando was 10 miles an hour, 10 kilometers shorter, the outcome was going to be the same, or there was going to be contact. And ultimately, Lando cannot take contact because that ultimately loses him another race where he can gain time on Max, and Max knows that, right?
Max knows that.
Yeah, he's so that for sure was just a dumb move, a desperation move by Max, I think, at that point, and probably the most egregious out of the two incidents.
Right. Yeah. And they, I think the stewards' penalties on offer that they can deliver is a 5-second, a 10-second, or stop and go, I believe, is what they offered. And they chose the harsher, without doing a stop and go, 2 10-second penalties for both incidents. Max says he's not going to whine about it. I don't, a lot of people say, he's going to be really mad going to, I don't know. I don't know if that's how Max rolls now. Maybe in the past he may have gotten rattled by that. I don't know if he will at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty late. Even in the past, he's been like, he's obviously peeved, but he doesn't let the emotion get the best of him to some degree.
I don't know if he will. I feel like he's, a lot of people argue, well, he's exploiting the rule.
Yeah.
And taking full advantage of it. Maybe he is.
That's his job.
That's what he's doing.
Not everyone goes there because everyone feels like, right or wrong, that's not the right way to go racing, but someone is always going to be there doing that. I mean, Mexico, this is where we came up with the Max Verstappen moving under braking rule, right? This track a couple of years ago. So yeah, he always is going to be pushing those limits, no matter what. That's his mentality, and that's how he becomes a world champion. honestly. He does it differently than everybody else, sure. Some people won't go that far but because it's uncomfortable for them or they don't think it's right, but that's how Max is, and he's not doing anything, as I said, he's just pushing the rules to the max, and some people don't want to go there or don't like people doing that.
Yeah.
But someone's going to do it always.
Yeah, until they change the rule.
Yeah.
And so I think they're supposed to get together later this year and have a discussion about it. But it's uncomfortable for sure. Yeah. And he got penalized. He paid the price.
Yeah, I mean he's driving an inferior car at this point, maybe the third best car on the grid, maybe.
Right.
But he couldn't even catch the Mercedes, and so he's doing everything he can to try and keep himself in that world championship.
Yeah. He's guarding a championship title here, So he's going to get aggressive, and he knows Lando has a lot to lose. Mm-hmm. And so he's going to push the envelope on it, and if you either like that or you don't, but that's just the reality of what's going on.
For sure.
And so, but by contrast, you had Oscar Piastri saying, after the race, they interviewed him. He said, look, if you're going to penalize one driver, you should penalize both. Yeah. If they both went off, you should penalize both. I don't know. He said, I don't know if it's fair just to penalize one driver.
Yeah, I don't agree with that, because if the other driver doesn't go off, it's full contact. And I think Lando did the right thing in avoiding contact, and to avoid contact, he had to drive all the way off the road because he knew exactly what Max was doing. And they had a little contact in that first incident, just a little wheel to wheel. So I don't agree with that, with what Piastri's saying. I get what he's thinking, but I don't agree with it because, you try and avoid, you can win the battle but lose the war by allowing that contact to happen.
So you think he's maybe been a little too pragmatic about it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Let's talk about Oscar. So he had a bit of he's had a couple chippy races. Things haven't really fallen his way. Mm-hmm. Had kind of a bad qualifying for sure. And he was knocked out in Q1. Had a lot to do, but he did recover all the way to P8. So it wasn't a bad drive. It was a bad starting position.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with qualifying. That was nuts. Obviously, Perez were kind of coming to expect it, but Piastri, they made a blunder there, and Ferrari had to use an extra set just to get themselves through. It was competitive, right? It was competitive qualifying.
Right.
But they shouldn't put themselves in that position. But ultimately, I think, he bode his time pretty well, and, when he put on the second set of tires, he made short work of a lot of people, and to get himself all the way up to there, I thought was pretty impressive. It may not have been spectacular, but impressive nonetheless.
Yeah, he had some good battles back there too, trying to get back up to that point, which is pretty tough, and pretty aggressive though, siding through the field. And he had a lot to see it. Yeah, and
people were battling him hard, so it wasn't like they were just waving him through. So he was delayed quite a bit, fighting with some of the drivers.
I did think it was kind of. Oh, sorry, my mic cut out. Yeah, sorry about that.
You start swearing? Were you being bleeped out?
I did. I did. Yeah. I was like, "What the." I started swearing on that one. I think when he said, it's not fair to penalize one driver, and he thought they penalized both. I bet McLaren was like, no, don't say that. You're talking about your teammate there. Hey, what does he care? He's not here to carry water for either of them. He's there to win. For sure, so that was pretty funny. Let's talk about Mercedes, shall we? So Mercedes, you had Lewis Hamilton P4, George Russell in P5. Good news is Mercedes had kind of a tough Friday. Didn't look quite there. George had the crash, but they ended up finishing in P4 and 5. But the bad news is they were half a minute down the road from the leaders. So while they had a great battle with each other, They did recover the weekend, and after George's crash, Lewis got by George at the start, but then Russell got back around Lewis. I thought it was a good move on Lewis. And then George picked up some front wing damage. Unfortunately, that allowed Lewis to get back under, but it took quite a while. George didn't make it easy for Lewis to get back around him.
For sure,
he eventually did, because George is down on downforce and managed to get by. So, yeah, they did look better than they started out on the weekend. They were still half a minute behind, and good battle between them.
Yeah, I think that's the key. I mean, yeah, the result not bad, but the 30 seconds behind, very bad. But it was fun to watch them battling each other, but they literally had nothing to lose. There was no one. They weren't going to catch anyone in front. They had no one behind, so the team just kind of let them go at it. And just that little bit of downforce lost by George eventually eroded the tires, I feel, enough where he just couldn't hold Lewis off anymore. He held on for a very, very long time, managed it very, very well. But ultimately, once Lewis got the move on him, he didn't fight it too hard. He knew it was inevitable.
It was kind of inevitable at that point.
Yeah.
Sorry about my mic. I was trying to spare everybody on the podcast to hear my neighbor who just decided this would be a great time to get out leaf blowers. And,
is that what he's doing?
Yeah, he's like blowing.
He's really going at it. What kind of motor has he got on that thing?
Yeah, I know. He's hit the DRS button and he's going for it. He may be doing about 230 miles an hour over here with a leaf blower. It's like, whoa, look at that.
Get over there, go, oi, neighbor, no.
Yeah, the entire lot is just flying with dust and leaves.
I always question why that even happens. Where are you blowing this stuff to?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I know. Well, he may be at this
blowing
point,
into your house, probably.
Yeah, or the Gulf of Mexico is at the rate of. He's like, wow, that's impressive. Yeah. Somebody should sign this guy. So anyway, let's talk about Red Bull. You had Sergio Perez, P17, Max Verstappen in P6. So Max got a good start. And despite getting repassed by Carlos, he did have a clash with Lando, and that resulted in 2 penalties, 2 10-second penalties. When he eventually did stop, he served the aggregate, which was 20 seconds, and then came back out. And even doing that, despite serving the 20-second penalty, Max did manage to get the car back up into P6. He came out in P18, Paul, managed to get all the way back up to P6. So a lot of people upset with Max and what he did, but you got to hand it to him. He made the most out of it, getting back up to P6.
He did make the most of it. Yeah, I mean, he was driving with an old motor, right?
Yeah, kind of a weak motor.
That they were only going to be using for practices, but ultimately they had to swap the motor out without getting the penalty here. It may not last very long at this point because they probably do get a grid penalty at the next one. But I think, he once again, it's kind of what his second half of the season is damage control. You know, he's going to lose points, but he needs to measure how many he loses and how far backwards into the clutches of Lando he does. If he can keep doing what he's doing, he's going to, hold on enough to win the championship. And ultimately, that's what he's doing. He's maximizing it. A little unspectacular in results, but definitely getting it done. And that's why he's fighting so hard.
I kind of said at the beginning of the year when they started, not at the beginning of the year, kind of a quarter way through when they started struggling a little bit. And I made the comment that this could turn into a 2009 season.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it is.
It is.
Not that I'm a Delphic Oracle. I'm just saying, it reminded me that he's got this, like Jensen Button had, he's got this bank of points. And you remember once everybody got on top of that dual diffuser, Jensen wasn't winning races anymore. It was just, he knew he was going to bleed. It was trying not to bleed so much every race. And in this race, Max lost 10 points to Lando this weekend. So
and the teams are doing a great job in clawing and lifting themselves above the Red Bull. So it's getting more and more difficult the deeper in the season we get.
It is. So what you're seeing.
Yeah, if he gets one DNF in the next race or so. Yeah.
And if they go into Brazil this weekend, he does have to do an engine change. He's going to have a grid penalty, so he's going to start and back. So it's really about, just trying to minimize how many points they're going to bleed on a weekend. And this is what you're going to see the team fighting really hard. But Paul, this is where you need a Sergio Perez. And unfortunately in Mexico, as much as Mexico loves him, as much as you and I love Sergio, he's a great guy. He had a tough Saturday, couldn't get a Q1, then an even tougher Sunday, Yeah. He had a great start, but he was lined up wrong in the starting box, and then he got a 5-second penalty for that. Came in, then he came out and had really a ham-fisted battle with Liam Lawson, trying to prove a point there. But so is Liam. Liam's like, I'm sorry, you're in my seat, Sergio. And so then Sergio very much diving down the inside, and like Max did, very almost carbon copy, forcing Liam wide, so much so Liam gave him the bird once he got back high. Just ham-fisted, and they ended up doing a 3-stopper because that, he's home, his crowd's here, they love him, let's box him late, put softs on, and go out and get that fast lap. Didn't even get the fastest lap.
No,
I know. Just a tough race for him and Max.
It was uncomfortable to watch. I mean, you got so many people there, his fan base just going just going crazy for him every lap he makes, every time he comes out on track.
I know.
And that you would think, if you can't lift yourself on that occasion, I just don't feel there's anything left there. What do they call it? The yips in baseball or whatever, right? I just think he's at that point.
He's got the yips.
Yeah, he just does not have it right now. I don't know if he could get it back. There's no saying, but at this point, his age, where he's at, I don't see him even being given a chance to get it back. And I feel he's shown so little that Red Bull are very much mistaken. They've made 3 mistakes. Once at the beginning of the season, once at the mid-season point when they had a chance to change him. It's time. I don't care who you put in that seat from the Red Bull stable, be it Ricardo, Yuki, or Liam, but someone else is better off in that seat than Sergio. And they just keep hoping for the best, but I think it just keeps getting worse.
Yeah. If it was me, Paul, and they could contractually do this, there's something in Sergio's contract that would prevent him from doing it. He went to Mexico. That's what it was. Brazil. I'd put Liam in that car because absolutely. I would want to try to consolidate second place in the Constructors' Championship because that's worth millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, he's not scoring points.
He's not scoring points. What do you got to lose? Put Liam in there. Give him some seat time for the rest of the season. Move Sergio to RB, and I would let him get some seat time and then put him in that seat next year.
Yeah,
that's what I would do. But that's just me. I don't know if they can do that, but hate to go all helmet Marco on you, but that's kind of what I would do.
Yeah.
I hate it because I love Sergio. He's awesome. Let's talk about Haas F1. Nico Hülkenberg P9, Kevin Magnussen P5. Paul, great weekend.
P5?
For Haas. I'm sorry, P7.
Okay.
Did I say 5?
You did.
It says P7 on my notes. I don't know. What am I thinking?
It's that blower out there. It's distracting.
I know. Yeah, well, you were kind of like, what? Yeah. What?
And all the other stuff going on.
Yeah, right. Both started in the top 10, Paul. Great weekend for the team. So happy for the men and women over at Haas to finally be making progress. And I got to say, a big hat tip to Ayo Komatsu, who is doing what Gunther Steiner should have been doing with this team, but wasn't. And I'm sure Gunther would have a lot of reasons why. Bottom line is he's making a difference here. And this team has turned around. Kevin had a great race, even running down Lewis in a Mercedes, right? And holding off a McLaren, right? Fantastic race for him, home in P7. And then Nico really looked good for really a P8, but lost that spot to Piastri late in the race. But defended very well. Some might argue, Paul, doing a little bit of Fernando there. Held Piastri off long enough to give Kevin a shot to consolidate P7.
There we go. Yeah, they've been giving each other help as the season goes along. Isn't it? It's so great to see.
It is.
The Haas team from desperation. It wasn't that long ago. They're exactly where the stake F1 team is.
Yes.
Just no hope. and they really have turned it around, and the drivers are giving the team the rewards that they deserve for doing that. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, Kevin Magnussen just chasing down Lewis, like, how the hell did this happen? But so great to see. I'm very happy for him to make that work. And,
maybe the circuit flattered him a little bit, Paul, because it was, fast circuit. Maybe it did, but maybe they go to Brazil and they aren't quite as fast. But I don't know. You and I've talked about they've been playing around in the top 10 for points every race here for a while.
They have. Yeah. They're definitely top of the midfield at this point.
Yeah, I guarantee you, Williams would love to be where they're at.
Yeah, no doubt.
And Stake would give their right arm to be where they are right now.
And Aston Martin would too at this point, the way things are going.
Well, true. Mm-hmm. Let's see, Alpine, Pierre Gasly in the points, P10. Esteban Ocon, P13. Pierre started in the top 10. Good qualifying for Pierre. And then while I didn't have Alpine scoring in the top 10 in my fantasy
those
picks.
Bonus points either.
So I lost that, but I was wrong.
Gasly.
Yeah, Pierre proved me wrong. He was involved in that Albon sandwich at the start. That dropped him back a little bit. Then once he stopped, he was a little farther back. But he managed to be pretty feisty, hung in there, fought his way back in, protected his track position, and as the cars cycled around him in their pit stops, ends up in the top 10, consolidates it in P10. Good result for him. And, a point scored. So that was good for Alpine, although they should be battling Haas, but yeah.
Yeah, they should be ahead of Haas.
Yeah, true.
Knowing their budgets and all that kind of stuff. But I think Gasly has been doing a great job also the past few races and elevating that car to where it probably shouldn't be. It's easy to get, down on the drivers when the car is not performing, but Gasly is definitely making a difference there that Ocon isn't.
Yeah, and I'm trying to be fair to Esteban. He started from pit lane, right? Had to change the battery, started from pit lane, managed to get back up P13. So not bad, but like I said, they should be beating Haas at this point. They're not. But anyway, a better weekend for Alpine for sure. A worse weekend really for Aston Martin. Yeah, tough weekend. They Lance Stroll had a P11, not too bad. Fernando Alonso DNF. That was unfortunate. It was 400th race for Alonso. Had a very cool celebratory helmet for that.
That was cool, yeah.
It was, yeah, but didn't last long. He had a brake overheating issue. Like they thought there was some debris or something got in a brake duct and cooked the brakes, so he had to retire. DNF. Lance had a better race, I would say, this weekend. Couldn't manage to get past Pierre for a point, but he did a good job managing the tires, getting up there. He had a couple good battles going on midfield, managed to squeak out a P11. Nothing really to write home about, but a better race for him individually this weekend.
Yeah, pace-wise, he was ahead of, I think, Fernando on the road.
Yeah.
So they were there or thereabouts towards each other, so that's never a bad thing for Lance to be. Right. Wherever he's going to be in the future. But yeah, the team overall underachieving for sure. They're doesn't seem like they're grabbing anything to elevate them. They just seem to be slipping further and further back behind Haas, behind Renault or Alpine or whatever you want to call them, but gradually just not really moving forward.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be heavily engaged in apologetics for Aston Martin, but I don't know, maybe they flipped the switch a little while ago and focused on next year's car. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean they definitely don't have a lot to lose or gain. They've scored enough points in the majority of the season that they've kind of got a good gap. But and with the top four teams fighting as hard as they can, there's really not going to be a lot of points up for grabs for the midfield group to actually be able to catch them. So you may be right there.
Yeah. Williams, Alex Albon, a DNF, Franco Colapinto, P12. Alex got sandwiched by Pierre and Yuki. Really, all three of them got into that Albon sandwich. Really nowhere to go. That ended his day. This left Franco to carry the baton at that point. He started on the hard compounds just like last weekend, but the strategy didn't quite work out the way he'd hoped like it did last weekend and get him in the points. Yeah. He managed to get a penalty, though. He had a clash with Lawson. He'd been out of shape with Liam like everybody else was and ended up down in P12. So not a great weekend for Williams.
Yeah.
I think they thought they could get some points here. It didn't happen.
I expected points. Obviously, the clash at the beginning took Albon out of it. But and Colapinto may have only finished 12th, but boy, that guy's feisty.
He is feisty.
He is something.
Yeah.
him and Liam alongside. You know,
they're both feisty.
Yeah, both feisty and got pace. Yeah, I mean, maybe he didn't score the points. Maybe the strategy didn't work his way or whatever. But still not disappointing in how he's performing in the car, in my mind, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if he'll find another ride, if Williams can find a place to put him next year and let him cut his teeth. I don't know, but I would say if he doesn't find a ride and he's part of the Williams stable next year, it does put a little pressure on Alex.
Yeah, for sure. Sure, but
he drove well enough to put some pressure on Alex.
Yeah, but we talked about it. I think Audi or Red Bull would be very correct in taking a good look, see if they can get that opportunity to bring him in, because I think he's kind of proven, he wasn't a flash in the pan or a one-off kind of. He's
absolutely
consistency. From when he came into Formula One, he's performed the same way.
Yeah, I totally agree. Audi would be wise to look at him and team him up with Nico Hülkenberg. Would be a good combination. RB, we talked about Liam Lawson, P16, Yuki Tsunoda, DNF. Yuki got caught in the Albon Gasly mess. That ended his race on the first lap. Not a lot he could do about it. I felt bad for Yuki. I really felt bad for the team, Paul, because I think they both got caught up in some stuff. Liam, again, winning more friends this weekend, on track with Fernando after him, and now Franco Colapinto not happy with him, and then Perez and Liam having little conversations after the race, getting a little in each other's face there. But Liam flipped Perez off once he was passing Perez. He started on the hards, went long, which left him battling Perez and then battling Colapinto. He said it's a shame because he honestly felt they did have points, a pace for points this weekend. He just needed clean air to get there, and unfortunately, he spent most of his day behind, on somebody's gearbox, and he said it was really difficult. They tried the same strategy that worked last week. It didn't work here in Mexico, very much like Williams did, and it didn't really work. So I think there was points possibly on offer. Unfortunately, Yuki didn't get really the chance to execute, and Liam ends up in the battle with Perez and battling back and forth with Colapinto and didn't really get to execute either. So unfortunately for RB, I kind of felt like neither driver really executed or was able to execute.
Yeah, I think, definitely the car and Liam in it, and maybe Yuki, but obviously you didn't get to prove that, were point scoring cars. But I think once you got into that long run and they're just waiting for a full course yellow to kind of get that cheap pit stop, once you've kind of committed to that, if it doesn't work out, you pretty much start at the back of the pack, and it's little hope for you fighting forward. So the strategy could have worked out if there was something, a late full course yellow, maybe with 20, 25 laps to go, would have worked out great for him, but it didn't. And once, as I said, it was a throw a Hail Mary, it didn't work out, and that's where you end up.
Yeah. And then you got Sauber, Valtteri Bottas, P14, Zhou Guanyu, P15. Both started on the hard compounds, run long for stints. Valtteri ran longer than anyone on his compounds, and they looked better for pace this weekend in aggregate, but still at the back of the grid and not able to score points. Even though you had attrition here, they still couldn't pick up a point. But if there's a positive, I would say they look quicker this weekend than they did last weekend, but not good enough.
Yeah, closer, but not close enough.
Right, exactly. All right, let's get some awards. First award is always Move of the Race. Is this playing? Is my soundboard even working?
I don't think so. I think that guy with the blower probably blew a fuse out there.
There, it's working. Silly. I don't know what's going on with my sound. I think the leaf blower did something to my soundboard. Who'd you have move of the race?
I got the pass at the beginning with Sainz repassing Verstappen. It was going to be difficult, but he had to brake super late, but he was on it and he was full of confidence, and to do it quickly like that was very, very important. And because Max can play with you a little bit, so I think it was really important, and ultimately allowed him to control the rest of the race, which was also a pivotal point. Great
move. It was good. Just to switch it up, I'll give it Max and Lando. It's the move everyone's talking about. So,
definitely the moves of the race, not necessarily good or bad.
Yeah.
Well, definitely bad.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, this always comes up. When you watch F1 long enough, we were talking about this a few years ago, and then a few years ago, you remember the British Grand Prix, and Lewis is down on the inside, and Max was on the outside, and Lewis punted him off, and everybody, that's Max's fault. You're an idiot if you think you can pass on the outside, and then it was all about giving remember a year or so ago, it was all, no, you got to give him a car width. You have to give him a car width, and all this stuff. And it just goes on and on and on. So
yes, it sure does.
I just thought, well, I'll give it to move the race. Let's see. Let's do donkey of the race. Who's your donkey?
My donkey, I'm afraid, is Sergio.
Yes.
You like my face?
Yeah.
You like it?
I have to hit the button twice to make this thing work.
Yeah, it's kind of what
I gave
Sergio
Perez
has
too.
to do.
Yeah. He has to hit the button twice too. Yeah.
DRS! No.
Drinks bottle. No. Oh, boy.
Ay, caramba.
I know.
Yeah.
It just...
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, that's where you are.
Pretty much.
That's where you are. Let's see, and finally, drive of the race. I think we both had Carlos, did we not?
Yeah, we did.
Yes, Carlos. Yes, great race. Great race. I'm happy for him. I think he should try to go all out and win all the remaining races.
I think so, too.
I think he shouldn't worry about Charles. He shouldn't worry about anybody. He should try to win all the remaining races and make Ferrari question why they're letting him go.
Yeah.
And make Williams elated that they're signing him, right?
Yeah. I think Lando had a good race too, also.
He did. He did. Yeah.
Put that pressure on the Ferraris at the end. I thought it was pretty good too. So
Lando really did have a good race. He did. And he got mugged by Max, no doubt.
Yep.
And I thought he recovered well and then really gave Ferrari all they wanted. And so, he's got the bit between it. So kudos to him. Let's see. We do have a couple of mailbag questions. The first one, our longtime friend Fabio asked this, Paul. He said, hi, TPF team. Question for Paul. As the Grand Poobah of Harder Racing. Well, he's not the Grand Poobah. That's Ian.
For sure.
That's Ian James. And Ian is wickedly awesome dude. But Paul's right there. He's the vice poobah. He's right there. He said, I have a question about promoting drivers. He said, with the younglings finally getting their moment to shine in F1, how do you know that you're getting a Piastri, Colapinto, or Lawson and not getting a Latifi, Mick Schumacher? He said, as both Latifi and Schumacher did well in F2, Mick won the series.
Yeah.
But both failed in F1. Is it a case of put them in and hope for the best? As that would seem like a big gamble. Love the pod as always. Cheers. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, hope is not a plan. So you can only make your best estimates on previous data. That's, data is everything in racing, and everyone's looking at data, how they performed. But also, remember, people come with budgets as well. And it's not necessarily, I don't think anyone brought in Latifi because he had won a few F2 races thinking he was the next coming of Senna. He came with some added bonuses to the team, right?
A lot of money.
Although with all these crashes, he wore
Cost
that
a lot
out
of money.
just a little bit quick. But you look at drivers, how they're done, you measure them up against where they've been, what series they're running in. It's one thing to say, I won every race of the year, but were you up against any competition? And teams definitely look at that, and everyone has that data and ability to look back. But some drivers don't, come to fruition until they get into the big cars, like Mansell, and there's all kinds of drivers that had a lot of potential that got to Formula One and just floundered.
Yeah.
So you just have to, and Colapinto, who thought that guy was going to come in and be the next best thing, that everyone wants to snap up if they'd had a seat available. He was like 6th or 7th in the F2, so you can't use that as a complete judgment. But you use that data and then just see how they perform, because definitely drivers perform differently as they go up the ladder, and it could be a good thing and it could be a negative thing as well.
Yeah, tough. Let's see. Nick asked this, Paul. He says, please explain why Max was able to serve 2 10-second penalties in one stop rather than as 2 separate stops. The one penalty stop was advantageous for Max. I think I think it doesn't stipulate it in the regulations that if you had 2 10-second penalties, you have to make physically 2 stops.
Right.
If it did say that in regulations, then that's what he would do. The team would have to.
And which would be a double whammy because this was a one-stop race.
Right.
Right. So, that would literally become a stop-and-go penalty rather than a 10-second penalty, which is, a stop-and-go penalty is probably at least a 30-second penalty added onto your time. So, the team, what the team wants to do is serve their penalties as quickly and as soon as possible. So if there's a full course yellow, safety car, whatever, it can negate a lot of that penalty they've paid already. But if they leave it hanging there over their head, if they came in and only served 10 seconds and then didn't come in again, the next 10 seconds will be added to the score at the end of the race weekend in the results, which could be a lot worse.
Yeah.
So you want to get those penalties over and done with, get them out, hope for a safety car to make up for those penalties and not have to pay for them the whole time. But ultimately, you want to get them out of your way.
Yep. Great question, Nick. Thanks for the question. And Fabio, appreciate that. All right. Well, don't worry, because Paul and I are going to be back, this time next week, because we're going to be talking about the Brazilian Grand Prix from Sao Paulo.
That's a fun one.
Any predictions, Paul?
At this point in the season, I cannot predict anything.
I know.
I think it's a Ferrari or a McLaren game for here on out for the rest of the season. But I don't know which way we're going to lean. If I was going to lean, I'd say McLaren might have a little edge at Brazil, even though I think Ferrari overall have an advantage through the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Well, hey, let us know what you think about the Mexico Grand Prix. You can do that. Just go to theparkformay.com. Huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. We could not and would not do this podcast without you. And if you like watching a podcast, you can do that at our YouTube channel. That's also at our website where we post these podcasts. And you can find the links there to our YouTube channel. You can watch Paul and I discuss.
Curious about our wallpaper.
Yes,
or lack
if you're curious. Yes, wallpaper and guitars and
guitars. Yeah, we've both got guitars in our.
I know.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Race cars and guitars.
Race cars and guitars. It doesn't get any better than that.
It does not.
So you, if you listen to the podcast, give us some love. Like the podcast, share the podcast, rate us, give us a good rating over, your favorite podcast player. Spread the love. So that would be great. And then we will be back next week to do it all over again. And until that time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long. I have to hit this twice, Paul.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.